Okay, so you want to own a lottery. Not play one, own one. Print the tickets, set the odds, collect the cash from every gas station and corner store in the state. Sounds like the safest business on earth. You're not betting against anyone. You're the one holding the deck. It mostly is. No lottery in history has ever gone broke because too many people won. But some of the smartest people to ever touch this business didn't get rich running the lottery. They got rich finding the 1 week a year the math quietly flipped in the player's favor. And the state didn't notice for years. Not hackers, not insiders, at least not at first. Just people patient enough to read the rulebook the way it was actually written, instead of the way everyone assumed it worked. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how a lottery makes its money, how a retired couple with a legal pad legally broke it, and why the safest bet in gambling almost never stays safe forever. A state lottery isn't really a casino. It's an insurance company. It collects small, predictable payments from millions of people, sets aside a legally required chunk to pay claims, and banks the rest. The randomness is real. The business underneath it is actuarial. That's a strange thing to say about something that feels like pure chaos from the outside. A restaurant doesn't know how many people are walking in tonight. A lottery, run well, can predict almost to the dollar how much it'll collect this year and how much it'll pay back out, before a single number gets drawn. The unpredictability is only ever on the customer's side of the counter. So who actually owns one of these things? Level 1. The retailer. Every gas station with a lottery terminal is a micro-franchise of the state. No buy-in check, just a signed agreement and a terminal. In exchange, they keep about 5 to 6% of everything they sell, plus a bonus for cashing a winning ticket. A busy store clears a few $100s a week. Small, but it never really stops paying, and unlike everything else on the shelf, it never expires in a dumpster out back. There are hundreds of thousands of these terminals running across the country at any given moment, quietly forming the entire retail backbone of an industry most people picture as one big machine in a government building somewhere, when really it's a corner store network first and a bureaucracy second. Level 2. The state. Most US lotteries are government monopolies, and standing one up isn't cheap. A secure ticket printing network, terminals wired into every retailer in the state, a random number system that can survive intense legal scrutiny, a fraud division, a marketing budget large enough to keep tens of millions of people buying tickets for a game they mathematically shouldn't. States routinely spend tens of millions of dollars on this infrastructure before a single ticket sells. Add a new multi-state game, and there's a whole separate layer of cost just to coordinate rules, prize pools, and drawings across every participating state's legal system at once, which is part of why so few new multi-state games launch in any given decade. Once it's built, though, the state owns a business with no real competitors and a legal monopoly protecting it from ever facing one. Level 3. The private operator, mostly outside the US. In the UK, the National Lottery is run under contract by a private company that wins the right through competitive bidding. Getting that license costs years and tens of millions of dollars in preparation, for a contract that typically runs about a decade. Win it, and you're renting a legal monopoly on a country's gambling habits. Lose it, and every dollar spent preparing the bid is just gone. Camelot found that out the hard way. The company ran the UK National Lottery from its launch in 1994 all the way through 2023, nearly 30 years. Building it into one of the largest lottery operations in the world and turning a reliable profit the entire time. Then, in 2022, the regulator awarded the next license to a different company, Allwyn, on the promise of higher returns for good causes. Camelot fought it in court and lost. 3 decades of infrastructure, brand recognition, and retailer relationships changed hands almost overnight, because the entire arrangement was never really ownership. It was a very long lease, with a hard deadline built in from day one, and everyone involved had somehow convinced themselves it wouldn't actually come due. There's a smaller 4th tier too, the charity raffle, the kind funding a hospital wing or a youth league through a few thousand tickets. Tiny scale, real regulation. Post a bond, file the disclosures, same as everyone else. The moment money and odds combine, regulators show up no matter how small the room is. Winning the right to run a lottery is the cheap part. What happens after is where it gets strange. And it starts with something most people assume the operator controls completely, and actually doesn't. Here's the first thing nobody warns you about. Almost every lottery operates under a legal payout flaw. Somewhere between 50 and 65% of every dollar has to go back out as prizes by law. A casino can quietly shift its house edge game by game, machine by machine, without a regulator ever needing to sign off on the change. A lottery can't. The rules are printed on the ticket and filed with a regulator, sometimes years before the game even launches. Whatever margin exists has to survive on what's left, and it can't be quietly widened in a slow quarter the way a private business would trim costs or raise prices. The house edge is public information, permanently. Here's the second. When someone wins a massive jackpot and takes the annuity, the lottery has to fund 20 to 30 years of future payments immediately, usually by buying government bonds sized to cover the whole obligation. A $1 billion jackpot isn't a $1 billion cash expense the day someone wins. It's closer to 500 or 600 million committed today, structured to pay out over decades. Run enough of these, and a state lottery ends up sitting on a portfolio of long-term liabilities that looks less like a corner store and more like a life insurance company that happens to sell scratch-offs on the side. Here's the part almost every winner gets backwards to. Most people assume the smart move is the annuity. Steady payments spread out, harder to blow all at once. But from the lottery side, and often from the winners, the lump sum is usually the better financial decision. Because that headline $1 billion number was never really $1 billion. It was always the total of 30 smaller payments spread across 3 decades, discounted back to what they're actually worth today. The jackpot on the billboard and the jackpot in the bank account are 2 different numbers wearing the same advertisement. Taxes make the gap even wider. Whichever option a winner takes, federal withholding alone claims roughly a quarter of the prize before a single dollar reaches their account. And state taxes stack on top of that depending on where the ticket was bought. Run the full math on a headline 9-figure jackpot, and it's common for the actual after-tax cash a winner walks away with to land somewhere near 1/3 of the number that made the news. Nobody puts that figure on the billboard for obvious reasons. There's a third, quieter cost too, and it never makes it into the pitch. Keeping the dream alive costs money. A lottery only works if enough people keep buying a product that mathematically loses them cash over time. And that takes constant advertising. Billboards timed around a big jackpot, TV spots, point-of-sale displays refreshed every time a new scratch-off launches. State lotteries spend tens of millions of dollars a year just reminding people the dream is still on sale for $2. When a jackpot climbs past a certain threshold, that spending doesn't even need much effort. The news does the advertising for free. Cameras outside gas stations, headlines about the size of the prize. which is exactly why lotteries design their odds to be long enough that jackpots roll over for weeks or months at a stretch before someone finally hits. A jackpot that gets won every single week never gets big enough to make the evening news. So where's the profit if the payout is fixed by law and the winners create decades of liability? Shrink it down. A $2 ticket with total prize value averaging $1.20 across everyone who buys one. Mathematically, a bad bet. Buy enough of them and you lose money, reliably. The same grinding certainty as a casino's house edge. Most people know this and buy anyway, because the math was never the point. You're not selling probability. You're selling 2 minutes of a different life for less than the price of a coffee, at a predictable markup. Put real numbers on it. The odds of matching all 6 numbers in a game like Powerball sit at roughly 1 in 292 million. For comparison, you're something like 15 times more likely to be struck by lightning in your lifetime than to hit that jackpot on a single ticket. And people don't buy one ticket. They buy tens of millions of them. Every drawing, twice a week, year after year. Fully aware of the number and buying anyway. That gap between the odds and the behavior is the entire business model. There's a contrast worth noting here too. Scratch-off tickets, not the big jackpot draw games, are actually where most lottery revenue comes from, often well over half of total ticket sales in a given state. The jackpot game is the billboard. The $2 scratch card sitting by the register, bought on impulse alongside a pack of gum, is the actual engine. It doesn't need a 9-figure prize to work. It just needs to be cheap, instant, and sitting exactly where you're already standing. Casinos have to disguise their edge. Dim lighting, no clocks, free drinks. A lottery doesn't bother. The odds are printed right on the ticket. 1 in however many million. No fine print required. People buy it anyway, by the tens of millions, every week. That's not a flaw the industry is exploiting. That's the entire product. But rolling jackpots create a wrinkle. When nobody wins the top prize, the money rolls into the next drawing. Enough rollovers in a row and the jackpot balloons past what the base odds would normally justify. And every so often, in specific games with specific rules, the rollover grows so large that the expected value of a single ticket briefly crosses into positive territory. For a short window, buying tickets stops being a bad bet on paper and becomes, mathematically, a good one. It's a narrow window, and most players never come close to catching it. You need a game small enough that the odds of winning are still reasonable, a rollover structure generous enough that the extra money actually flows down to reachable prize tiers instead of just inflating one distant jackpot nobody hits, and the patience to notice the pattern in the first place instead of just buying a ticket and moving on with your day. Big national games like Powerball almost never produce this condition because the odds are simply too long for any realistic rollover to compensate. It tends to show up in smaller, regional games, exactly the kind most players and apparently most lottery commissions pay the least attention to. For most of the lottery's history, almost nobody outside the industry noticed this. Almost nobody. There's a related trap most people never see coming, and it's the flip side of that same rollover math. A game can look completely broken from the outside. Enormous jackpot, no winner for months, headlines wondering out loud if the numbers are somehow rigged against everyone, and still be operating exactly as designed. A drought of winners isn't a sign something's gone wrong with the lottery. It's the mechanism working precisely as built, quietly transferring money from millions of small bettors into one growing pile until the odds themselves start to bend. In the early 2000s, a retired party store owner in a small Michigan town named Jerry Selbee picked up a brochure for a game called Windfall and noticed something in the rules. When the jackpot rolled over past a certain point without a winner, the money didn't carry forward invisibly. It rolled down into the lower prize tiers, dramatically boosting smaller payouts. Jerry ran the numbers on a legal pad and found that on those specific weeks, the ticket's expected value tipped above its $2 price. Not by a little, by enough that buying in bulk was closer to a savings account than a gamble. So he and his wife Marge did something almost boringly disciplined about it. Nothing hidden, nothing illegal. The rules were public. The math was public. They were just the ones who actually finished the arithmetic. They formed a small company, pooled money with investors, and on roll-down weeks would stand at a terminal for 10, 12, sometimes 18 hours straight, feeding in slips by hand because the machine could only print so fast, taking turns so one of them could sleep in the car. Marge kept the books. Jerry kept checking the math before committing real money. Less a heist than an extremely long, extremely boring shift at a job only 2 people in the state understood existed. Over roughly 9 years, that grind generated millions of dollars in completely legal, fully taxed profit. It wasn't fast money either. Some roll-down weeks meant driving hours to reach a store with a terminal fast enough to keep up, then standing there through the night while the machine chewed through slip after slip, betting slips piling up in grocery bags at their feet. A group of MIT students found the identical seam in a nearly identical Massachusetts game and ran the same play at a larger scale, with spreadsheets instead of legal pads and a rotating crew of students instead of 2 retirees. It didn't stay quiet forever. A Boston Globe reporter eventually pulled the thread after noticing a strange spike in ticket sales from a handful of specific stores on specific weeks, and the resulting investigation exposed both operations publicly: the retired couple in Michigan and the student syndicate in Massachusetts. Officials scrambled to figure out whether any law had actually been broken. It hadn't. Every ticket had been bought at face value through a legitimate terminal, following rules the state itself had written and never bothered to model all the way through. Massachusetts's Attorney General reviewed it and closed the matter without charges. Both games got quietly redesigned within the year to close the anomaly for good. The math hadn't been broken. It had just been read more carefully by 2 retirees than by the institution that designed it. A story so unlikely, it eventually became a Hollywood film, with Bryan Cranston playing Jerry. The math wasn't the only weak point either. A few years later, the security director of a national lottery association, a man with legitimate, privileged access to the systems generating random numbers across multiple states, quietly installed code that let him predict winning numbers on specific days each year, leaving the system looking completely normal the rest of the time. Associates cashed rigged jackpots worth millions across several states before an unusually large, unusually suspicious claim on a multi-million-dollar Iowa prize finally triggered an investigation. Security footage eventually placed him at the exact terminal on the exact day, buying the exact ticket that later won. He's now in prison, and lottery associations across the country rebuilt how those random number systems get audited, adding outside oversight to a process that used to run almost entirely on trust. Multiple past jackpots in several states are still, to this day, considered permanently compromised, paid out, closed, and never fully reconciled, because there was no way to prove after the fact exactly which drawings he touched and which he hadn't. 2 very different failures, same underlying lesson. The odds themselves are airtight. everything built around them isn't. One team beat the lottery by outworking its own actuaries, with nothing more than patience and a legal pad. One person beat it by simply being trusted with the wrong door, and walking through it quietly enough that it took a suspicious ticket claim to notice. That leaves two real mistakes worth remembering. First, underestimating how much a small number of patient, technically sharp outsiders can extract from a system designed for millions of casual players who never do the math. The Selbees weren't cheating. They were simply the only people in the room who finished the arithmetic, and for 9 years, that was enough. Second, trusting a handful of insiders with unchecked access to the one part of the system that has to be perfectly random for any of this to work. All of the payout math, all of the actuarial confidence assumes the numbers coming out of the machine are genuinely unpredictable. The moment one person with the right access decides they aren't, the whole structure that looked airtight from the outside turns out to have exactly one weak point, and it was never the math. Fix the math, and someone might still rig the machine that generates it. Guard the machine, and someone might still just be better at arithmetic than you expected. There's a newer threat neither Jerry Selbee nor Eddie Tipton had to deal with, and it doesn't come from inside the building at all. Legal sports betting has spread to most of the country in the last few years, and online casino apps have followed close behind, both competing directly for the same impulse a lottery ticket has always sold: the cheap, fast chance at a different outcome. Several states have already reported lottery ticket sales flattening or slipping as sports betting apps eat into that same pool of money. And unlike a mall losing a department store, there's no obvious anchor tenant a lottery can bring in to win those customers back. A scratch-off card can't offer live odds during a football game. The dream it's selling is starting to compete with a faster, flashier version of the exact same dream, sitting in everyone's pocket already. So how much does this actually make at each level when nothing goes wrong? A single retailer isn't getting rich off commissions, but the income is remarkably steady, the lottery equivalent of owning a laundromat. A few $100s a week that doesn't care about weather, the economy, or how the rest of the store is doing that month. Sell a single winning ticket worth a few $100,000, and most states cut the retailer a bonus that can run into the thousands on top of the commission they were already earning on every ticket that didn't win anything at all. Multiply that steady trickle across a chain of a few dozen stores, and lottery commission alone can quietly cover a meaningful chunk of a small retail company's fixed overhead year after year without a single marketing dollar spent to earn it. There's also a quieter effect that rarely gets mentioned. A store known for once selling a big winner tends to see a lasting bump in customers who figure the location must be lucky. Nonsense mathematically, very real at the register. A large state lottery pulls in several $billion a year in ticket sales. California's lottery alone sells around $8 billion in tickets annually, and still manages to funnel close to $2 billion of that straight into public schools every single year, on top of everything spent on prizes, retailer commissions, and running the operation. After the mandated payout, retailer commissions, and operating costs, the state is typically left with hundreds of millions in net proceeds. Money usually earmarked by law for public programs, most often education. That's the number that explains why states defend these monopolies so fiercely. It was never really about the games. It's about owning one of the only revenue sources that funds public budgets without ever needing a vote. Worth saying plainly, since the numbers make it hard to avoid, that revenue doesn't come from everyone equally. Study after study on lottery spending finds the heaviest ticket buyers, by a wide margin, are lower-income households, spending a noticeably larger share of what they earn than wealthier ones do. A business with a legally guaranteed margin, funded disproportionately by the people who can least afford the $2 markup on a daydream, is a genuinely uncomfortable thing sitting underneath an otherwise elegant piece of financial engineering. And the private operator sits in between, structured completely differently from either one. The profit comes from the spread between the legally mandated payout and everything shaved off operating costs over the life of the license, plus whatever the brand and distribution network are worth if the contract renews. Lose the license at renewal time, though, and years of infrastructure investment can evaporate in a single bidding round, handed straight to whoever wins next. Just ask Camelot. It's the one version of owning a lottery that comes with a built-in expiration date, which makes it a genuinely different bet than either the retailer's steady trickle or the state's near-permanent monopoly. 3 tiers, 3 completely different risk profiles, and all 3 sitting on top of the exact same fixed, legally guaranteed math. The retailer never loses the deal because there's nothing to lose. No contract expires, no license comes up for renewal. The terminal just keeps running. The state almost never loses the deal because it wrote the rules and owns the monopoly outright. The private operator is the only one of the 3 playing an actual game with an actual ending, decades in the making, decided in a single afternoon by a regulator's decision. The real money was never in playing. It's in owning the machine and understanding, better than the people running it, exactly how that machine behaves the one week the odds quietly bend. So if you ever own a piece of a lottery, remember what Jerry Selbee understood before the state did. The safest bet in the building was never the ticket. It was the printer.